And this particular course, I think you the pioneers of the maiden MBA program that was specifically couched with input from various industry players. It actually took time to develop because we were actually seeking the input of several people to make it really very relevant and industry driven. With at least the long-awaited program is here, and we hope it will be sustained over a long period of time. Let me use this as an August opportunity to welcome you once again to this particular program, and specifically to this particular course that we'll be doing over the next 10 weeks. My name is Muaz Ibrahim. So this is, yes, you can see this. My name is Muaz Ibrahim. I joined, I think, UJS in 2017. So I've been here not for too long, and I've also been on and off, but hopefully I'll be around for some period of time. So I will be taking you through this particular course, which I hope will be quite interactive. And just by nature of this particular program is going to be hybrid. By being hybrid, we are going to be connecting colleagues from online, and we will also be having physical sessions like we are having now. And then for some, I think for week 7 or 6 onwards, we will having this particular session virtually. And the good thing is, at least with technology, we can all be connected. And with technology, we shouldn't be denied of this particular, program. Please, if you can't hear me, let me know. Or if I'm also fast, that is my weakness. I talk very fast. That is my weakness that I'm working on. Okay. So for this particular program, we will be looking at business economics. I've developed the course outline, which I will be sharing with the course rep to be sent to all of you. We will also be sharing the various PowerPoint slides. Thankfully, we are not going to be fixated to only one particular book. We will be using a couple of textbooks. And the rule of the game is whatever material that we are going to use, you should also have it. Because unlike our first degree days where lecturers and students used to play hide and seek game, this is not supposed to be the case. So for instance, in tech, our lecturers will hide books that they are using, then let you go and look for other books. And during exams, you will have to look for any other means to make sure you pass. This is certainly not going to be the case. So for these 3 books that we will be using, I would have to share all of them with you. I have the soft copies that I will be making available to you. I've also ordered for the PowerPoint slides from the publishers. So hopefully within this week, maybe by tomorrow's Monday, it should be ready that I will be sharing with you. So after this particular first session, good morning, I'll be taking the course ref number so that you can at least share this particular course outline with them. The course is largely economics, blended with some business operations. So it is not purely economics, even though it is, because at the beginning we will have to be looking at issues around, microeconomics, and later we will look at issues around macroeconomics. But the good thing is this particular program will largely be, application based, even though there are some areas that we will be using theories. And the program is also designed in such a way that you would have to use both analytical and algebraic to be able to solve our daily life situations. But as much as possible, I will try to be very basic so that we can as well all benefit from the purpose of this particular program. Okay, so the program is divided into the program, which means this particular course that we are doing is divided into a number of parts. So for the first part, those online, can you hear me? Just give me thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. So for the purposes of this particular course, it's been divided into, I think, 4 parts. So the first part, we'll be looking at the economic and business environment. It's just going to be an introduction to this particular course. So today, that is definitely what we are going to do. And we will also be looking at the part 2, and the part 2 is an introduction to some basic concepts in microeconomics. So with this particular one, we are going to revisit our, undergraduate microeconomics before we go deeper in the subsequent sessions. So here we will basically be looking at issues around our demand and supply, just to refresh our minds, and then also areas around elasticities. This is going to be very, an introductory part of whatever we'll be going to do, because we will need to refresh or revise our basics. So part 3, of course, is also on issues around microeconomics, but we'll be looking at areas around interaction among firms. This particular section is quite broad, and I don't know whether we'll be having the mid-trimester exams, or we should make it in a presentation or assignment. This is something that we can discuss later, whether presentations or assignments. I'm not really a fan of our exams. Part 4, we'll be looking at issues around macroeconomics. So macroeconomics relative to the micro, where we'll be looking at individual units, firms, individuals, or households. For the macro, we'll be looking at the broader economic perspective. So specifically issues around economy-wide cases, like countries, maybe Ghana, for instance. We'll be looking at issues around our macro environment, how our GDP is composed, and as a business entity, how does that particular, composition affects you, because your contribution also directly feeds into, our domestic product. So in the subsequent ones too, we will also be looking at, issues around monetary policy, issues around central bank operations, issues around our financial stability. Excellent. Okay. So we'll also be looking at issues around our financial stability. At the moment, we all know what is going on in Ghana, around debt exchange, around heavy debts, and the effects on overall financial sector stability. So the aim is, of course, to let us be able to have the benefits of this particular, ongoing discussions, and be able to contribute in a more practical and concrete forms to. Okay. So to be able to benefit in a more and contribute in a more practical and concrete way to the ongoing discussions. At the end of the day, you should also be able to provide some advice, maybe if you are called upon, either our economic managers or maybe as an independent consultant, you should be able to provide some key advice to support whatever, decisions are being taken. Any question from now? Okay. So today we are just going to do with one, where we will be looking at this particular introduction and basic microeconomic concepts. So here we're looking at business and business economics. So the key focus is looking at business one, and then the other one we're looking at issues around economics. So when you talk about business, so like I mentioned, the slides will be shared with you maybe by tomorrow, but the course outline will be shared with you today. Okay, so we have business and we have economics. So largely business, we're talking about entities. We're talking about entities. And for economics, the focus is on how our resources are being managed. So if you are a business manager, your focus is on how your resources are going to be managed, how your production is going to be carried on, how the combination of labor, capital, and all the various inputs are going to be used in the production process. Because the bottom line is we'll be discussing that resources are largely scarce. So by being scarce, we need to be very, efficient in how we combine the two, or in how we combine our production inputs in the producing a particular product. In terms of cost, how much you will incur in producing as a business entity would also depend on how efficient you are able to combine your various inputs in the production process. In terms of making profits or revenue, it also depends on how efficient you are able to minimize the cost aspect and be able to maximize the revenue aspect. And by profit, we're talking about how you are going to widen the difference between the two. The revenue that will accrue from the sales, and then the cost that will you will incur from the production of that particular product. So mind you, as a business entity, like I'm just mentioning, your main focus is actually to look at how you are going to make prudent production decisions, how you are also going to make prudent decisions around revenue, and how you are also going to make prudent decisions around what profit. This is profit. Around profit maximization, because the key focus is this directly feeds into the total what cost as a business entity, and this total cost that you are going to look at is a function of so many variables. We are talking about the cost of labor. We're talking about the cost of capital, because they are all factors contributing to this particular total cost. The revenue, we also be looking at how efficient are you in the actually optimizing or increasing the revenue to be able to maximize the profit, which we will look at the total revenue minus the total cost. So these are the basic or the main focus of this particular one. So the idea is how efficient are we in managing this particular key action points to be able to optimize our profits, to be able to exist as a business entity. So largely that is going to be the focus of this particular program. So we'll be going in deeper into this particular issues. And like I mentioned, issues around economics has to do with how we are going to be able to blend and efficiently manage all the resources. Now, if we talk about issues around the micro aspect, on the micro aspect, we are talking about individuals. And by individuals, we are referring to myself, we are referring to you, we are referring to all other person here. We also be looking at, by micro, we also looking at households. So my households, your households, they all comprise the micro aspect. And we also be looking at issues around firms. Firms also comprise of what? The micro environment. So under micro, we are going to look at discussions around how individuals make our decisions. It falls under micro. We are also looking at how individual households make their decisions. It is also under micro level. We are looking at how firms as entities make their decisions, also forming part of what? The micro level. So whatever that these entities make is classified under micro level. So these are micro level decisions that these entities will individually be making. But these individual decisions, like here, if you are a business manager, you are an entity, or if you are a landlord in your house, you are an entity, you're classified under individuals. But if you are taking the household decisions, sitting down to take decisions regarding how you allocate your resources at the household level, we basically be looking at what? We are talking about the household levels as a micro entity. And if you are looking at firms or businesses, the decisions that you take relating to these areas will all form part of what? The micro level decisions. But when we aggregate all these decisions to the national level, we are looking at what? Issues around macro. Issues around macro. So when we are talking about our individual level decisions, basically referring to micro, but when we move further to look at issues around macro, we are looking at what countries or national level perspective. So this will be the second part, and this is the first part. So this is where our focus will be from today going until such a time that we are able to get to the macro level decisions. Firms will produce for these guys, individuals, they also produce for households. And of course, they also produce for themselves because your input as a firm is someone's, or your output as a firm is someone's what input. So you may produce what is called the intermediary or intermediate good or input. And this intermediate or intermediate good will be the output, the input someone will use to produce the what? The output. So you as a firm, your product is not the final. Someone might be using that to produce what? The final commodity. So farmers will produce maize as their final product, but to some firms, the maize that's being produced by farmers will be the what? Yes, will be the intermediary that they will also use to produce their final product. So in this particular case, before these guys, the intermediary goods will be passed on to the final firm that will turn it into the final product. They should be willing and able to actually acquire that particular intermediary good. So in this case, whatever individual will acquire from the production, whatever household will acquire from the production, whatever firms would apply from the production, these particular entities, they should be what? Willing. They should be willing, that is one, and they should also be what? Able to actually acquire whatever input or whatever good that they want. And by being willing and able to acquire it in economics, we call that what? Demand. So we are just transitioning. So if I'm quite fast, just let me know it. Okay, so we are transitioning. So for those online, I would be giving you the slides. So just I know you are not benefiting from whatever we are doing at the moment, but from next week, I'm sure you'll be able to catch up. Okay. So today we are going to look at issues around demand briefly, and then transition to the next stage. So in terms of demand, like I mentioned, we are talking about two things. There is no demand if you are not willing, and there is no demand if you are not what? Being able to. I know Muda likes technologies and issues around flashy cars, but he can't acquire Tesla. We also have latest Apple laptops. He can't acquire it. Even though he might be willing, he's not able to do it. So in that case, there is no demand or there is no purchasing power. Excellent. There is no demand or there is no purchasing power. So by purchasing power, the focus is on you being what? Able and you being willing to acquire that particular, goods that you want to acquire. But also know that issues around demand, if I put it this way, issues around demand is not fixed. It's not fixed. Or issues around demand is not a stock variable. Issues around demand is not fixed or it's not a stock variable. It is a flow variable. So issues around demand is a flow variable. By being a flow variable, it is contingent on time. It is contingent on time. It is contingent on time, which means that issues on demand are dependent on time. So it is a time variable, which means that Muda may not be able to acquire whatever he wants today. He may not be able to, he is not having the willingness and the ability to be able to acquire that at the present point in what? In time. But maybe with the passage of time, he would be able to do what? To actually acquire that. So demand is a flow variable, which means that demand being a flow variable is dependent on the passage of what? Of time. I may not be able to acquire iPhone today, which means that at the present point in time, there is no demand because I don't have the willingness and I don't have the ability to do that. But with the passage of time, maybe from next year or next month, I will be able to do what? To actually acquire whatever that I want to acquire, specifically for the particular good in question. So, and because of that, demand is not a fixed, because I'm not able to acquire it today, doesn't mean that I won't be able to acquire it tomorrow. So it is contingent on time. So let's remember, there is no demand if one is not willing, and there is no demand if one is not what? If one is not able to actually acquire that. So now let's just refresh our minds on the key factors affecting this particular demand. I'm going to be quite brief because these are, yes. Okay, so for the stock variable, we're looking at issues that are fixed. Issues that are fixed. So for instance, when you say something is fixed, it means it is time invariant. It is time invariant. It is time invariant, which means that it doesn't depend on time. If it is this today, it is this tomorrow, it is this tomorrow next. So the kingdom come is the same thing. So if your demand is time invariant, it means that, so for instance, if your demand for Apple phone is time invariant, it means that if you are not able to acquire the Apple phone today, even tomorrow, you will not be able to acquire it. At any point in the future, you will not be able to actually acquire that. Yes, it might be in time invariant for some people, because maybe if someone is ultra poor, if someone is ultra poor, maybe throughout the person's lifetime, the person can never acquire an iPhone. I get it. I know we have some people who are less fortunate. So if you are ultra poor, no matter what, you will not be able to acquire whatever that particular good you are demanding in question. So in that case, your demand is time invariant, and by being time invariant, we say it's a stock variable. Later, when we go to national income accountant, we will be talking more about stock variables. Any questions? Okay. So now let's look at the key factors that actually affects our demand. So just to be brief, so factors affecting. So like I mentioned, today's introduction, just to refresh our minds on some basic concepts before we go mad later into the course. Okay. So factors affecting demand. So DD will be demand. Factors affecting a question. Okay. So once we're looking at what? The price of the good that we are talking about. The price of the good. Those here, I hope you can see it. Okay. So the first issue, factor that we are looking at, a key factor affecting the price of a commodity is what? The price of that particular good itself. The price of that particular good itself. So by looking at the price of the good, we are talking about the monetary value that we will exchange for that particular good. So here we're looking at the monetary value of that particular good that you will exchange for it. So we are looking at the monetary value that you will exchange for it. And by looking at the price of the goods, this is where this key concept that we call law will come in. So the law of what? Of demand. So under the price of the goods, we're looking at the monetary value of the product that you are going to exchange for. And this is where the law of demand will come in. I think it was propounded by Alfred Marshall. He came out with the issue on law of demand. And the law of demand just basically talking about what? The inverse relationship between this particular price and the goods that you are going to demand. So the law of demand says that whenever price of a good is high, then demand is supposed to do what? Demand is supposed to decrease, which means that at higher price, less would be demanded. Is that not it? Which means that at higher price, less will be demanded. Conversely, at what? At lower price, more would be demanded. Is that all? No. If we hold all other things what? Constant. So which means that if we hold other things constant, when the price of a particular commodity should increase, we expect demand to do what? To decrease. And if the price of the commodity should decrease, we expect demand to increase. That means if we hold all other factors what? Constant. And I think in Latin they say ceteris what? Okay. So which means that the law of demand says that if you hold any other thing constant, when the price of a good is high, demand should fall, and when the price is low, demand should increase. Which means that if you don't get any extra support, when the price of a good should increase, then you should demand less. But when you get extra support from somewhere, you may still tend to increase your demand. So the law is holding that extra support what? Constant. That if you don't get any support from somewhere, then we expect the quantity, the demand, or the demand to what? To fall in response to an increase in price. Or when the price reduces, we expect demand to increase. That is, if there is no, of course, extra or external, influence. For any decrease in price, you are expected to do what? To increase the quantity of a good that you are demanding. So for the price of commodity, we are talking about the negative relationship between what? Demand and then what? And then price, between demand and price. Later, we will be demonstrating this mathematically as we move along, which means that the quantity or the demand for a good is first of all a function of what? Of the price. So if the relationship here is negative, as this one is going up, this one is going down, or this one is going down, this one is what? Going up. We expect the coefficients to be what? To be negative. Are you getting it? We expect the coefficient, or we expect the sign of price to be what? To be negative. We expect it to be negative. So let me just put it here, to be negative. To be negative. Okay. So the second one, the second factor that we are going to, yes. Mm-hmm. The demand, the price will be low. That, yes. So we will come to that in the second one. So for the second one, if we talk about the income, so the income of I cancel the units. So either the income of the individuals, the income of the firms, or the income of the households will also affect the demand. Will also affect the demand. And by income, we are talking about your salaries, your bonuses, your allowances. When you put everything together, it forms part of your what? Your income. Know that there is a difference between the income and then what? And wealth. So for the wealth, we are talking about all your incomes put together, less how much you owe. So if you are talking about your income includes your owings, how much your liabilities. But when you take away those liabilities and everything, you get to your what? To your wealth, or the net what? Or the net what? So the focus is on the income. So as your income increases, we expect your demand for a particular product to also increase, because you are now having more money. So here you also say you are now having more purchasing power. Okay. So in this particular case, if one gets an increment in the salary, all things being equal, the person is supposed to increase demand for a particular good. And if you get lower income, you are expected to also do what? To decrease the what? The demand for a particular good, even if price is what? Is low. So in this particular case, for income as a factor affecting demand, the focus here is on two things. One, the focus is on the type of good that you are looking at, the type of good, under income. So under income, the focus is on the type of good that we are looking at. So under the type of goods, at the moment, we will restrict it to two. We will restrict it to two. So the type of good first, we are looking at what? The normal good. And the second, we are looking at what? Inferior good. We are looking at the normal good and inferior good. So remember, under price as a factor affecting demand, this is where the law of demand comes in. But as income being a factor affecting demand, this is where the type of what? Good comes in. And with the type of good, we are looking at what? The normal good or the inferior good. So with the normal good, we are talking about a good whose demand will increase following increases in what? In your income. Remember, we are still talking about what? Income as a factor. So for the normal good, if your income, which I will represent as Y, but later income will be output. So if your income increases and your demand also what? Increase, and your demand also increase, then that particular good is your what? Is your normal good. So if you get more income, instead of buying one takeaway, you buy two. Then which means that that particular good that you are buying is what? Is a normal good. Conversely, if your income falls and then the demand for a particular commodity also does what? Falls, which means that it's the same, normal goods that we are talking about, even if price is what? Is low. By reducing your income, which means that your purchasing power is less. It means that your purchasing power is less, has dropped. Conversely, for the first one, if there is an increase in price, implicitly, your purchasing power has also what? Dropped. Because you will not be able to acquire more, or you will not be able to acquire the same good that you used to acquire before. So even if price increases, or even if your income decreases, implicitly, your purchasing power will definitely what? Fall. To be able to acquire the same quantity that you used to acquire before, you need to top it up. You need to top it up by increasing your what? Your income to be able to acquire more of that. So when you look at the relationship between income and demand, you see they move in the same direction. So we say the relationship is what? Is positive, or the relationship is direct. So in this particular case, income as a factor affecting demand, or demand being a function of income, we expect the sign of income to be what? To be positive. We expect the sign of this to be positive. Later, we will be showing it mathematically. So which means that if we write the demand equations, maybe for a firm or a business entity, and you have the various signs and the rest, we should be able to know which particular good that we are looking at, or whether purchasing power has fallen or it has dropped, it has increased. Okay. The second one that we are going to look at is in a situation where there is an inverse relationship or an inverse link between the two. Between the two, one is what? The income. The second one is what? The demand. So in this particular case, if we have an increase in income, under normal circumstance, we expect demand to do what? To also increase. But in a situation where your demand actually falls in response to an increase in income, then we say that particular good is what? Is inferior. So in this particular case, your demand will actually go down. Your demand will actually go down. So which means if your income increases, instead of increasing more, consistent to the normality, assumptions, in this particular case, you would rather go into purchase less of that particular good, even though your purchasing power has what? Has increased. Even though your purchasing power has increased. So, but when your income falls, then you will tend to look for that particular good to do what? To buy what? to buy more of that particular good. So in this particular case, the relationship between income and demand is what? It's negative. It's negative. So the income coefficient or the sign can be positive or what? Or negative. So when the equation is written mathematically later, and then the income sign is negative, you should know which type of good is that. Are we following? We should know which type of good is that, which means it is what? An inferior good. Okay. We may not have a universal example for inferior good, but others may tend to say Gary or I don't know how you call bana in English. So when you go to buy food and you buy more meat, when your income when your income increases, you buy more bana. When your income increases, you leave it and buy meat and chicken, or you buy tilapia. So that is it. So for that type of good, we call that what? And inferior good. So in this particular case, the coefficient or the sign of income, as you know, one of the functions influencing demand, can be positive or negative. Can be positive or negative. Any question? Yes. Yes, that's what there's no universal. Yeah, so it's individual specific. It's individual. And I still remember here we say Gary. But I remember tech when we were doing undergrad, I had a friend of mine from Nigeria who ever asked me whether I've eaten Gary. And I told him yes. And he said, oh, then you must be rich. Meanwhile here, Gary tend to be the preserve for the poor. Gary tend to be preserve for the poor. Okay, so let's move to the next one. So those online, any question? Muda, can they hear me from here? Yes. So I've sent 5 so let me attend to those online. Okay, there is no question. So Muda, that the screen, so you tell them we will be, so for those online, we'll be sharing the slide with you later. Okay. So let's look at the third factor. So let's look at the third factor. Can I cancel this one? So let's look at the third factor. So for the third factor, we'll be talking about the price of related goods. We'll be talking about the price of related goods. So here the focus is not on the price of that particular good that we are looking at. We are talking about the price of what? Other related goods. So for the price of other related goods, here the focus is on the substitute. The focus is also on complementary goods. So by looking at the price of related goods as a factor affecting demand, the focus is on these two, whether the related good that we are looking at is what? A substitute or is a what? Is a complement. It's a substitute or a complement. By being a substitute, it means that this particular good that we are looking at in question can be exchanged for that particular related good, which means that you can exchange the two, which means that intrinsically the two goods, let's say good A as our main good, and the related good being good what? B, which means that the two goods, they serve almost the same what? Purpose, which means that for substitutes, they serve the same purpose, which means that for goods that are substitutes, they serve the same purpose, which means that if you don't get good A, you can go in for what? For good B. And if you don't get good B, you can go in for good A. So you can exchange good A for good B, and you can also exchange good B for good A. Okay, so which means that if they all serve the same purpose, and our concentration is on good A that we are buying, and the price of good A increases, which means that our purchasing power has what? Has fallen, which means that we will not be able to buy more of what? This particular good. So if the price of this particular good A has what? Increased, from the law of demand, you should demand less of this particular good, because as price is increasing, less should be demanded. So if you are demanding less of this one, which means as a result of the increases in the price of that particular good, we tend to buy more of what? Of B, because B, we tend to buy more of what? B, because B is a what? Is a substitute. So if we don't get good A, maybe what is the name? Chelsea T, we can go in and buy Bond tea, yes, Bond tea. You can go in to buy more of. So if you say this is Chelsea tea 110, you can buy more of what? Of Bond tea. I have a brother. No matter what, he will never take Chelsea tea. That he ever drank Chelsea tea in the evening, went to sleep, and had a bad dream. That he was being used to sacrifice to the boss. So no matter what, he won't take Chelsea tea. And for some, when they take it, they get headache. Everyone and his or her own experience. But typically, Chelsea and then Bond tea are substitutes. In the place of Chelsea, Bond tea can easily do the job. And in the case of, in the absence of Bond tea, Chelsea can also be easily can be used to do the job, holding bad dreams, headache constant. Okay. So which means that if there is an increase in demand for good what? B as a substitute, it's not because the price of good B has what? Has fallen. It's because the price of the substitute has what? Has increased. So which means that we are buying more of good B because the price of the related good has changed. Specifically, we are buying more of good B because the price of good A as a substitute has what? Has increased. Okay, so which means that for substitutes, an increase in the price, let's say of good A as a substitute good, will lead to an increase in the demand. Is that not it? Of what? Of good B. So those here, we are saying that as a substitute, an increase in the price of good A is a substitute, will lead to an increase in the demand for what? For good. The same thing applies to the other substitute, which is good B, which means that if the price of good B also increases, then we expect to run away from good B to consume more of what? Of goods, to consume more of good A. So when you look at this, there is increase in what? In price, and there is also increase in what? In demand. They move in the same direction. So the relationship is what? Is positive, which means that if we pick here as the price of substitutes, so here A and B, I'm just putting it this way to distinguish. So we are talking about A and B, which means that if the variable referring to the price of the substitute, if it is what? Positive, it means that particular good that you are talking about is what? A substitute, because you can see the relationship. If the price of A increases, then we expect to buy more of what? Of B. So in this particular case, numerically or mathematically, we expect the coefficient or the sign to be what? To be positive. So here it's supposed to be positive. So if we illustrate it mathematically and you are asked to identify the particular good to maybe I can have MTN and I can have Vodafone, and I put their demand functions as firms, and then later ask you, looking at this, is this particular good a substitute to MTN or Vodafone? You should be able to tell me, looking at the various signs. Okay, So if we have this being positive, okay, okay. Mm. Mm. Mm.
But solution, those online will only both.
Mm.
I'm suggesting that as soon as you finish demonstrating,
You can take a picture and post it. It's true, it's good suggestion. So I'll stop cleaning until you take a picture and share for those online. But we also check here to see if there is question. Okay. So going forward, I will not clean until we have this sorted. Okay. So any question from here? So the next one that we are going to look at is the second one, which is the complementary. Or maybe you can sit here. Or if you can take it from there. Oh, then no problem, no problem. Okay. Okay. So for complementary goods as the second one, we're still looking at prices of related goods. So for complementary goods, the focus is on this particular good being jointly, maybe jointly demanded or jointly used. Jointly demanded or jointly used. So goods are said to be complementary if you cannot use one without the other. If you cannot use one without the other. So for complementary goods, once you get good A, you must definitely acquire good what? Good B. So because they are complementary to each other, you cannot use A without actually getting what? B. In this particular case, if the price of A changes, it will definitely affect the demand for what? For B. Because once you buy A at that higher price, you must definitely go and buy what? B, because you cannot use this like that. So not until recently, cars will definitely have battery. Is that not it? So, and I think Tesla still have they use battery motor. So in this particular case, as you are buying more, if the price of a car or a battery, if the price of battery increases, then we expect less of what? Of cars. We expect less of cars. Are we following? So goods are said to be complementary if the use of one is dependent on the other. So if the price of one complementary good increases, then the demand for the other good will what? Will fall. Conversely, if the price of the other complementary good decreases, then we expect demand for the other to what? To increase. Because once you buy at lower price, definitely you will go for this. So some also say torchlight and what? And battery. Even though there are some torchlights that do not use batteries. Book and pen. Okay. Toothpaste and toothbrush. Okay. So these are complementary goods. If the price of toothpaste increases, people will buy less of what? Of the brush and go in for a modest mishwak, the chewing stick. Okay. So that is the case. So in this particular case, you will see that the relationship here between the price and then the demand. Remember, this is price of A as a complementary good, and this is the demand for what? For B as the complementary good. They are inversely related. So in this particular case, if the price of a good is high and the demand is low, or the price is low and the demand is what? High for the other good, we say those particular two goods are what? Are complementary. So in this particular case, they move in opposite direction. So we expect the sign to be what? To be negative. So the price of related good can also be what? Positive, or it can also be negative. So if in the function, the coefficient or the sign of price of related good is what? Is positive, then the good is what? The good is substitute. If it is negative, it is what? It's complement. Any question? Any question? Okay. So let him write and we take a picture so that I'll clean. Maybe you can take so that I'll clean. For those online, but definitely going forward, we'll be using more of slide. No, they are following. No, they will understand. Huh? We are just this burden of under development. Elsewhere, once we are writing, they should be able to see. Okay. So please come again with the signs in relation to the complementary goods. Thank you very much. So we have a question, and the question is on the explaining more with regards to the science of the complementary goods. So now here the focus is on the price of related goods as a factor affecting demand. So the key focus that we mentioned is for related goods, we are talking about substitutes and we are talking about complementary goods. For substitutes, these are goods that can be exchanged. These are goods that can be exchanged, which means that, or they can be substituted for the other, which means that in the absence of one particular good, you can go with the other particular good. So in this particular case, if we have maybe Milo, and then the other one is what? Maybe Bonvita. Milo and Bonvita, these are two different products. And these two different products are substitutes. Because if you don't get Milo in the morning to consume, you can simply go in for what? For Bonvita. Or if you don't get Bonvita, you can go in for what? For Milo. So in this particular case, we are looking at the price of one particular good against the demand for the other good, not the price of the substitute against the price of that particular substitute. No, we are looking at the price of this particular good against the demand for that particular good. So if I say the price of what? Milo is against the demand for what? It's against the demand for Bonvita. So if we have price of Milo increasing, with the law of demand, we say that an increase in the price of a particular good should lead to decrease in demand. And even in this particular case, the decrease in demand will result in people after the increase in price will result in people actually doing what? Substituting Milo for what? For Bonvita, which means that more people will not be buying Bonvita because prices of Milo have what? Have increased. So in this particular case, the demand for Milo, for Bonvita will what? Will increase. So an increase in price of Milo will not only reduce the demand for Milo, but will also what? Increase the what? The demand for the other substitute good, which is what? The Bonvita. So in this particular case, you have the price of Milo against the demand for what? For Bonvita. So if the price of Milo is increasing, then we expect the demand for the other substitute goods to be increasing. So in this particular case, if the price of Milo is increasing, if the demand of Bonvita is increasing, as a result of increases in the price of Milo as a substitute good, we say the two, they move in the same direction. So as you can see, this one is heading up, this one is also heading up. If the price of Milo should also what? Fall. Law of demand says that at a lower price, you should what? You should demand more of Milo. And by demanding of more of Milo, in this particular case, it makes the price of Bonvita higher. Are you getting it? So people will demand less of this one and buy more. Are you getting it? So in this particular case, if the price of Milo should what? Should fall. People will do what? Demand more of what? And what will do to Bonvita? They will demand less of what? Of Bonvita. So here we are talking about the demand of Bonvita and we are talking about the price of what? Milo being lower. So in this particular case, they still move in the same direction. So because they move in the same direction, we say they are positively what? Related. So the price of substitutes are positively related. So if they are positively related, we expect the sign to be what? To be positive. We expect the sign to be positive. Okay. Alternatively, if the price of Bonvita should fall, then we expect the demand for the other one to also what? To also fall. If we also expect the price of this one, the Bonvita, to increase, or it's indeed increasing, then the demand for the other product should increase, because in this particular phase, this one is now expensive relative to this one. The second one, which we are going to talk about, is what? The complementary good. Let me look at them. Okay. So we are looking at the complementary good. So for complementary good, we are saying that these are goods that are jointly what? Demanded, or they are used what? Together, which means that without one particular good, you cannot use the other good. Without one particular good, you cannot use the other good. So for instance, if we have two goods that are complementary in nature, in this particular case, let me loosely say car and what? And battery. Car and battery. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we are comparing the price against what? The demand. We are comparing the price against the demand. So if the price of, let's say, okay, maybe this one can also go. If the price of cars should increase, people will not buy more of what? Battery, because once you buy a car, you will definitely buy battery. Or if the price of battery is increasing, people will buy less of what? Cars. Because once you know you are buying what? A car, you will buy battery. Yes. 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 Oh, but when I changed my car battery recently, the first time I bought it was 200 cities. I bought car battery I think 2006 or 7. Recently, I changed it to 600 cities. But we can still use, like you mentioned, we can still use fuel, and then what? Car. Okay, that's good. So if we have fuel prices actually what? Increasing, we expect people to buy less of what? Car. Remember, I said we are comparing the price of one good against the what? The demand for the other good. So an increase in fuel prices will result in people buying less of what? Cars, which means that the demand of cars will what? Will decrease. And then as a result of increases in the prices of what? Of fuel. If we have fuel prices actually falling, then people will tend to buy more of what? Of cars, because you know definitely once you buy a car, fuel prices are affordable for you to buy. So which means that as the price of the complementary good is increasing, less of the other good will be demanded. And as the price of the other complementary good is what? Is falling, more of the other complementary good will be demanded. So in this particular case, they move in what? In opposite direction, which means the relationship is what? Negative, which means they are negatively related. So which means that the price, the coefficient or the sign of what? The price is supposed to be what? Negative. So if the price is negative, we say that particular good is a what? It's a complementary good. I hope this is very clear. So which means that if we expand this that we are writing it in implicit form, which means demand as a form, we have not expanded it, so it's implicit. As a function of price, demand is also a function of income. Demand is also a function of what? prices of other related goods. But if we write it in the explicit form by expanding, we should be able to tell whether this is a substitute or this is what a complement by looking at the signs, by looking at the signs. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Any question for me, Muda? No, okay. So the next one, let's look at expectations. Let's look at expectations. I know maybe those who will be doing the maybe later MPhil finance or whatever, they will be doing more of expectations. We have what is called rational expectations. So let's look at the fourth one. The fourth one, we are talking about expectations. As a fourth factor, expectations. We are talking about expectations. We are talking about expectations. So expectation, it has to do with changes in the future or future changes. Future changes in future prices. So let's say changes. So with expectations, we are referring to changes in future prices. Okay, so with expectations, the focus is on the changes in future prices of a good. How do we expect the future price to be? Which means that at the present, do we anticipate an increase in future prices, or we expect decrease in what? In future prices. So if at the moment we expect prices of a particular commodity to increase in future, maybe next week, which means that at the moment, the price at the moment is lower compared to next week. So if the price is lower in the present terms, you will tend to buy more of that particular good now than waiting to buy it at higher price in future. Which means that if we expect the future price to what? This is future price. Which means if we expect the future price to increase, which means that at the present time, the future price is greater than what? The current price. Are you getting it? Which means that in the present term or the current one, this is future price. This is current price. So if we expect more prices or if you expect to pay more in future, then which means that if you have money or by normal law of demand, which means that at the present prices are low. So we will buy more of the particular good now. So if we expect future prices to increase, then we do what? We buy more of the current good. The same thing applies to decrease in future price. So if you expect future prices to fall, then you say, let me wait and buy it tomorrow because future price will be lower than the current price. So which means you are better off waiting and then buying it tomorrow. Remember here, we are also holding in other things constant because we may have surprises. So if you are going to hear maybe in next 2 weeks, they are going to review fuel prices. And by being rational, you may want to fill your car today than waiting to fill it tomorrow, which means that today's price is expected to be lower than tomorrow's price. So you will tend to buy more fuel now than waiting to buy it tomorrow. A friend of mine, before 31st, when they read the budget, he was expecting introduction of taxes. So he went and used all his money to buy iron rods, thinking they will increase taxes. So because of that expectation, because taxes will feed into increases in the price, we will be talking more about that later, taxes and subsidies, how that affects business operations. So if you expect more future prices to increase, then the present demand will have to be higher relative to future demand. Any question? So we have expectations. So here we also have expectations. We also have expectations. The key challenge is in economics, we often find it difficult molding expectations. We often find it difficult molding expectations. But when you go to corporate finance and I've forgotten of that topic. Oh, efficient market hypothesis. When you go to efficient market hypothesis theory, we make an attempt to model expectations. We tend to model expectation as this. So maybe I'll put expectations as this. Later, we will try to model it. So when I write this, it means expectations. So later, so just note the sign. So this is expectations. So for those online, please maybe if we can take a picture. So this will be my expectations. Expectations. Yes. Mm-hmm. No. Yes. So like I mentioned, expectations, we are looking at increases in future prices, at the same time, decreases in what? In future prices. So when you expect future price to decrease, which means that at the moment, the price will be what? Will be higher than the future price. So for expectations, future prices, if you expect future price to increase, which means that at the moment, current demand should be what? Should, because should be high, because the current price will be lower compared to future price. So which means that if you expect future price to increase, current demand is supposed to do what? To be higher. And if you expect future price to what? To fall, current demand is expected to do what? To fall, because at the moment price will be what? Higher. So by law of demand, you are expected to know that it is what? Demand will be lower, as you can see this way. So if we mold expectations like this, which means that if it is positive, what does it tell us about future prices? Here, future prices, here, we are talking about expectations. So if we have expectations, future prices here. So it means that we are expecting future price to do what? To increase. Is that not it? And if we have a negative expectations, which means we are expecting volume, yes. So which means that for the current demand, if the expectation is positive, what do you expect the demand to be? Demand would be what? Demand will be higher, because we are saying that the future price is expected to be higher. So which means the current demand is also supposed to be higher. Which means that even if here is negative, what does it tell us? It means firms, individuals, or households are expecting what? Lower future prices. Are expecting lower future prices. So if I also write the demand function and the coefficient of what? Expectation is negative, and I ask, what can you say about expectations of households or the market expectation? Here we are referring to what? Them anticipating that prices will what? Will fall. Maybe government is going to read budget, maybe November for the next fiscal year. And Ken is saying they are going to give farmers subsidies. And with subsidies, we expect prices to do what? To fall. Which means that for the next farming season, there will be more subsidies for farmers. Which means that we are expecting for the next season, prices of maybe inputs or fertilizer or everything should be what? Should be low. Which means that the expectations here is what? The signs of the expectation should be what? Should be negative. Are we following? Or if there's going to be taxes on farm implements, of course, by knowing this, you know that in terms of future expectations, we expect prices of those farm implements which will also be feeding onto the price of their final products. The farm products will be high. So we expect demand to be what? To be low. So that is it. Some people may add weather as also a factor affecting demand. Some people may also add advertising as also a factor affecting demand. Because the more you advertise, the more people get to know and the more they buy. Weather, we also know some goods are weather driven. They are dependent on weather. Maybe they say during rainy season, people tend to buy more of what? Warm clothing, sweater and the rest. But during the dry season, people tend to buy less of that particular one. So all the factors that we have, weather as a factor affecting demand, advertising as also a factor affecting demand, they are all factors that matter in influencing individual, household, or firm's decision to acquire or not to acquire a particular good. Any question before we move to the next session? Okay. So those online, do you have any question? Yes. Which one is that? Inferior good. Under income. Okay, no problem. But usually necessity goods come under elasticity. We're looking at the degree of responsiveness. If this particular good is a necessity, no matter the increment in price, you will definitely go in for that. Normally, they say for those who are diabetic, they go in for insulin injections. So no matter the price of insulin, if you increase insulin by 1,000%, they will still need to survive. So they will have to go in for that particular one. So for necessities, we basically be discussing more of that under elasticities. Okay. Any question? Positive. I canceled the positive one because I was making the. So expectation is positive when we expect future prices to increase, and vice versa. Okay. So let's move to the next session. Let's move. Yes. Oh no, it's under corporate finance. It's under corporate finance. Efficient market hypothesis is basically efficient market hypothesis is under corporate finance. It basically says it's basically say you cannot beat the market. It means you cannot beat the market. If markets are very efficient, your level of knowledge, whether private knowledge, public knowledge, or your ability to do technical analysis should not affect your earnings. So which means that how much you will earn today as your returns should be a function of the risks that you will bear, not the knowledge. And so this one is corporate finance, which means that if Muda is an investor and you put a donkey or a monkey, and the monkey is also an investor, by you being an investor, a human being a monkey, you shouldn't beat the monkey just because you have certain knowledge. No. Okay. So this one is efficient market. It's under corporate finance. So here, let's look at demand and then price relationship. Here, I'm just going to be very brief. So here we're talking about, okay, let me cancel this one. Just make it demand schedule. So for demand schedule, we're basically talking about a table. We'll be doing more of this. A table that actually shows the price and quantity relationship. So with demand schedule, we are basically talking about a tabular representation of prices and quantity. So demand schedule, we're basically talking about prices and then quantities. So in this particular case, if we have our price here, we have our quantity here. Now, if price is say maybe 10, let's say here the quantity in kilograms. So price is very high at 10. So if price is very high, we expect less to be bought. So maybe let's say 2. So if maybe there's a decrease in the price, we expect an increase. This one too, we expect increase. So maybe say 6. If we also have the same decrease, we expect this one to fall. If we have this one, we expect this one to also what? We expect this one to increase. Remember, these ones are what? Prices. So when you put this particular relationship in table form, this is called the what? The demand what? The demand schedule. It's called the demand scale. We'll be doing more of this one. So when you represent the relationship, so here, what can you see? You can clearly see the law of what? Demand. Because at a higher price, less is demanded. And at lower price, more is what? More is demanded. Now, when you represent this in diagram or graphical form, you will tend to have what is called the demand what? The demand curve. So with this particular one, we have here being what? The price in the Cartesian planes. We have price here, and we have what? Quantity here. Always this one tends to be the dependent, because how much you will demand is dependent on what? The price. So at this particular, plane is price, always the dependent variable. Here is the independent. So if we have 0, so even if here price should fall to 0, people will still tend to take more. So in this particular case, here you are doing feasibility. You are giving, you are not selling, you are dashing people. So they will come and take all. So when price is 0 here, people will come and take what? Oh, you see, quantity will be high. So maybe the quantity will be 12. Just tell them to ask to bring something small and take. Some will run away, and then you will have 10. If price should also increase to 4, to 6, to 8, to 10. So here you tend to have quantity actually what? Fallen to 8, 6, 4, and 2. So in this particular case, you will have it this way. I hope you are following. So once we plug in all the points from here to the down, we will realize that the relationship between price and then demand is what? Is negative. So this line that we are seeing is called the demand what? Curve. It's called the demand curve. So later, I won't be doing this. I will just be writing the curve. And you know that the demand curve tends to be inversely related, reflecting the what? Reflecting the law of what? Of demand. Reflecting the law of demand. I'm just being fast because I know these ones are basic, but we need to refresh our minds. Okay. Okay. Any question before we proceed? Any question? Okay. So now, what can we see here? From the initial, function that we wrote, which is demand, being a function of what? Price of the good. Are you getting it? Income. Price of related good. Expectations. Okay, advertisement and the rest. So let me just maybe limit it to this one. We can have a number of them. The factors are non-exhaustive. So if we have all these factors affecting demand, which means that if this one should change, this one is supposed to change. If this one change, this one is supposed to change. The same thing applies to the rest. Are we getting it? Now, remember I said, if this one should change, this one should change, this one should change, this one should change. If they should all change together, it will be difficult for us to actually know the exact demand. So what we do in economics is to hold any other factor constant. So in this particular case, if we want to assess the effects of changes in price on demand, which means that we have to hold all other factors what? Constant, which means that we have to assume that all these particular factors are not there. And if we are going to assess how income as a function, as a factor affecting demand, we need to hold these and all these factors except what? Income constant. Which means that for you to assess the effect of one particular variable as a factor affecting demand, you need to hold all other factors constant except that particular variable. Which means that in looking at the demand schedule or the demand curve, here, how many variables are we seeing? We are looking at prices and we are looking at quantity. Remember, this one is the demand and this one is the price. Here is the price of that particular commodity, which means that the demand schedule is drawn to assess how price changes. Only the price of the good affects what? Demand by holding all other factors constant, which means that as a firm, to be able to assess how price changes will affect demand, you do not need to take care of the other factors, which means that in this particular case, we draw the demand schedule, we draw the demand what curve based on the assumption that the external influence, which I will refer to the other factors, are held what? Are held constant. So in this particular case, how price will affect demand here will only be affecting the quantities that you are what? Purchasing. I hope we are following. Which means that the changes in the price that we are looking at will only affect only the quantities that we are talking about. So in this particular case, if price moves, let me say here is A, here is B, here is C, here is D, here is E. If price should move from A to B, which means that what is happening? There is a fall in price, which means that we are still using this particular curve, but there is a fall in price, and that fall in price will trigger an increase in quantity from 2 to 4, which means we are moving from A1 to B. Let's say at that particular B at price 8, there is a further decrease in price, maybe to 2. What should happen? The point will move from B to where? To E. And at that point, quantity will move from 4 to 10. At that particular place, maybe there is massive increase in price. And price is increasing from 2 to 6. Then we expect the point to move from where? From E to C. Are we changing a curve, demand curve? No, we are looking at the same demand curve. So in this particular case, we say there is a change in quantity what? Demanded. There is a change in quantity demanded. There is a change in quantity demanded. And what is resulting in the change in quantity demanded? Because there is a what? Changes in what? In prices. So which means that anytime there is a change in quantity, anytime there is a change in the price of a commodity, it will result in what? Changes in the quantity demanded. So changes in quantity demanded. So with changes in quantity demanded, it refers to changes in what? In prices. Are you getting it? Changes in prices influencing how much quantities that you will get. So which means that for changes in quantity demanded, it is just a movement from one point to the other along the same demand curve. So for quantities, for changes in quantity demanded, we are referring to nothing but a what? A movement along the same demand curve. And this movement is as a result of, know this, it's a result of nothing but changes in what? The changes in price of that particular good. Which means that we are looking at changes in this first thing. So when there is a change in price, it will affect the changes in what? In quantity demanded. And changes in quantity demanded is nothing but a what? A movement along the same demand, which means as a firm, when there is a change, your firm demand will not do anything, but it will do what? It will move along your current or your existing demand curve.
But what happens when there is a change in income? What happens when there is a change in this? Or what happens when there is change in any other factor affecting the price? Which means for that one, there will be a complete what? Shift. There will be a complete shift in the demand curve from one particular point to the other. So in this particular case, if we have this as our old demand curve and your income increases, if your income increases, there's going to be a what? A shift in the demand curve. You will no longer be on the old demand curve. You will now shift to a new what? You will now shift to a new demand curve. So maybe we can illustrate this. Just assume maybe your income is 100 and these are the prices. So when you divide, you will know the various quantities. Increase the income to say 120 and then divide by the current prices. The quantities will have to increase. So when you plot the graph, there's going to be a change in one demand curve to the other. So in this particular case, there is going to be a complete shift in the entire demand curve. And when there is that complete shift in the entire demand curve, we say there is a what? A change in demand. So please know the difference. So we have one, changes in quantity demanded, and we have what? Change in demand. So with changes in demand or change in demand, we are talking about what? A shift. A shift in the entire demand curve. We are talking about a shift in the entire demand curve. From an initial demand curve to a new demand curve. When there is also a change in price of what? A related good, the entire demand curve will what? Will change. When there is a change in expectation, the entire demand curve will change. When there is a change in advertising, the entire demand curve will change. When there is a change in weather, the entire demand curve will also what? Will also change. Are we taking a picture so that okay. So we can move to the next one. So for the next one, we will be talking about an increase and decrease in demand. We'll be talking about an increase and decrease in demand. I will want us to close this one. Okay. An increase in demand is different from an increase in quantity demanded. An increase in quantity demanded shows an increase in the absolute value of the quantities along the same curve. But with an increase in demand, it shows an increase in the quantities in a different what? Curve. So for instance, if we have this as our quantity and we have this as our price, this is our demand. Now, these are the various prices. Let me just use two. Let me say P1, P2. P1, P2, Q1, Q2. So in this particular case, we have point A, point B. When there is change in the price, we will be moving from A to B or B to C. In this particular case, we'll be shifting from quantity 1 to quantity 2 or quantity 2 to quantity 1 as a result of changes in this particular prices. So this is the movement that we are talking about. But when an income increases, when price of related goods increases, and when expectations or whatever, whether advertising change, then we expect this demand curve to what? To shift. So if the demand curve shifts to the right, if the demand curve shifts to the right, it means there is an increase in what? In demand. So if demand curve shifts to the right, there's an increase in demand. So for instance, if our income increases, our demand curve will shift to the right. So shift to the right means there's an increase in what? In demand. And when the entire demand curve shifts to the left, it means there is a what? A decrease in demand. it means there is a decrease in demand. It means there is a decrease in demand. Any question? Any question? So if government is implementing a new tax system, we don't expect to be on our old demand curve. We expect to move to a different demand curve. If there is an increase in tax system, then all things being equal, our income is expected to do what? Fall. Our purchasing power is expected to do what? To fall. In this particular case, where will our demand curve shift to? It will shift to the left. It should shift to the left because our purchasing power has what? Fallen as a result of decrease in our income level. So it will shift. So if there is, a subsidy that will be given, we expect prices to fall, and then this one, our income level will what? Will increase in absolute terms, so that to allow the shift in demand to the right. So this is it. So these are the changes and then the movement in the demand. Any question before I'll close this and we'll move to the next one? Okay. Any question? So let's represent this. So if this is written in the demand function, let's go back to our demand function. If the demand function is written in this particular form, say demand as a function of our price, as a function of income, as a function of price of related goods, as a function of expectations. Maybe the other factors will be there. Okay, thank you. So with this particular form, we say the demand function is written in an implicit form. In an implicit form. So this is written in an implicit form. Some people will also say it's written in compact form. We have compacted it. Implicit form. We have not opened it, so it's closed. But if we tend to open it up by saying that our demand is, maybe let's say we have our price here. Are we following? We also have our income here. We also have our price of other commodity. We also have expectations here. We are going to open it up. We have the coefficient of what? Of our price. Let's say the coefficient of our price is this. We have the coefficient of income. Let's say the coefficient of income is this. We have the coefficient of what? Price of related good. Let's say the coefficient of price of related good is this. This one is beta, not B. Beta. Beta. So beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. If we say the price of what? Expectations is also what? Beta 4. Now, remember when we're writing the demand function, even if price is 0, there will still be what? Some quantity to be demanded. So I can put that particular one here, beta 0. So if we write it this way, plus, 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 plus. This is written in an explicit form. Here was implicit, and here is now what? Explicit. So this is explicit. So this is our demand function. Later we'll be using more of this particular demand function. Maybe you can take a picture and send more of this demand function. I hope we still remember our calculus. We'll be doing differentiations here. Okay. Some of you did cost and not relative mass. Okay, no problem. Okay. So here, what can you say about the coefficients? The coefficients are all positive. Is that not it? We are just starting. The coefficients are all what? Positive. I hope you can see it. Here is positive, here is positive, here is positive, here is positive. What can you say about the effect of income? The effect of income on demand is measured by what? Beta 2. Are you getting it? The effect of price, okay, on demand is measured by what? Beta 1. Beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. This one's, let me say, beta I. These are all called coefficients. These are all called coefficients. These are all called coefficients. So here I can cancel the I and put 1. So it becomes the coefficient of what? Price. If I cancel I and put 2, it becomes the coefficient of income. If I cancel it and put 3, coefficient of price later within that order. So just to avoid that, I'm using what? I. So in this particular case, what can you say about the demand function? It says that all the coefficients, is that not it? All the coefficients, they are positive, which means they are all greater than what? 0 for all of them. So which means that here means all. This one means all. So which means that for all the coefficients, they are greater than what? They are greater than 0. This means all of them, all coefficients. So we're doing more of those particular things. So in this particular case, what we are saying is that all the coefficients that we are looking at, price of what? The good, income, related expectations, and whatever, they are all greater than what? 0. So to avoid writing they are all greater than 0, this is what I'm saying. Okay, so let's proceed. Here, have we included weather in this particular function? Have we included advertising in this particular function? But there are also other factors that matter in what? In influencing demand. Here, the assumption that we are making in this class for now is it's only these 4 factors. 1, price, 2, income, 3, related goods, 4, expectation. All these 4 functions are the only factors affecting demand, but that is not the case. There are also other factors. So we are going to control for those other factors by referring it to this one, epsilon. So this is called epsilon. Epsilon. Are we together? Okay. So everything that you are seeing here, so for instance, the epsilon that we are seeing here is a function of what? All other factors affecting demand, apart from excellent, apart from this particular 4. Because we may be wrong to assume that it's only these 4 factors. There are other factors. So we will have to make room for those other factors. So I'm grouping all of them here. Now, if we look at this written in explicit form, like I mentioned, the effect of prices of related goods is measured by what? The effect of price of related good is measured by excellent beta 3. Because I said the coefficients, they measure the effect of each particular variable on the demand. So we have the effect of what? Price of related good being measured by beta 3. And what is the coefficient there? It's positive. Which means by just looking at this, you will know that which good are we talking about? We are talking about subsidies. So with this one, just know that the demand here for this particular good that we are looking at is a what? It's a substitute. It's a substitute. I hope you can see from those, algebraics that we did over there. However, if we write the demand function and here is what? It's negative. It is going to be what type of good is that? Complementary good. So in this particular case, the coefficient of income is what? is positive, it means that that type of good is not only substitute, it is also a what? It's not only complementary, but it's also a what? A normal good. Because I said if the income, the income is what? The coefficient of the income is positive, it means it's a what? A normal good, a good that you will buy more when your income increases. Good. So if it is positive, it is not only a, but also a what? But also an inferior good. I hope we are getting it. Now, if here is positive or positive, we are just looking at only this as a whole. So here alone tells us that the coefficient is what? Is positive, which means that our income will increase. It will also lead to increase in what? The demand. And when that happens, what type of good is that? It's a normal good. So when I write the demand equation in an explicit form, and in the questions, you should know that this is a what? A normal good, even though I'm not going to do it, or these ones are basic, just to refresh our minds. Nothing from today will come in your exams, but it's just to refresh our minds. Okay. If you answer this, what about fear God small? The point is, if I ask you this, why would I ask the diploma or undergraduate students? Are you getting it? So nothing from today will come. Okay, but if you don't know what is being done today, you won't be able to apply it. That is the main purpose. Okay, so we know the various signs and what they all do represent. What they all do represent. So later we will be. So if you want to assess the impact of this one, which is income, which means that, like I said, we will hold all other factors constant, which means that we will assume that here is zero. Are you getting it? Which means that we are going to assume price of related good is zero, is held constant. This one is also held constant. This one is held what? Constant. This one is also held what? Constant. Are you getting it? This one will not also be there, which means that we are just going to look at how this one will affect this one with the assumption that there is no other variable here. Are you getting it? And once you do that, it is only going to be this one that will be left. Later, I will show that and then you see it more clearly. Any question, we move to the next. So if it is written this way in implicit form, this is how you can expand it in an explicit form. Any question? Yes.